Hey everybody, this is Mr. Storm. In this video, we are going to we're going to start creating our new game. I'm very excited. So let's just jump right into it. First of all, I have my assets package. Now this doesn't have as much stuff in it as yours should, but I do have a couple of pieces of art. I have a collectible. I have a bad guy. I have my environment art. I have my main character here. I also have a font that we're going to use later. And I have a couple of sound effects. I have some background music, and I have a walking sound effect. Today we're really only going to use these two things. We'll use the rest of those as we go, but I'm only really going to want the spaceman and the walking sound. Just make sure you have those downloaded and ready to go before you start this project. The other thing that I have is this player controller script. You can get this from the assignment itself. There will be a link to download the script. This script is going to handle all of your player movement for this first little piece of the game. I am not going to expect you to write your own scripts starting out, so I'm giving you a script to start from, and then we can modify that as we go. Okay, first thing you need to do is you need to open up your Unity hub, and you need to create a new project. Here's the way that works. Now, first of all, you may have a different version of Unity than I do. That is A-OK. That's totally fine. It may look a bit different, but as long as it runs, it's totally cool. You'll notice I'm using an older version. I'm using a 2019 version. That seems to be the version that's the most stable on my machine, so that's the one I'm using. Okay, you can go ahead and click New to create a new project. The first thing we want to do is we want to use 2D. We do not want to create a 3D project, obviously. This is a 2D game, so we're going to make sure we select 2D. Over here, we are going to give the project a name. Give it the name of your game. Cool Spaceman Game. Okay, whatever you want to name your game. Now, my naming convention, I rarely put spaces in things, so you can, do like that or whatever you want. You also want to change the folder that it's going to. If you have a specific folder you want your work to go to, you may want to change the location just by clicking on this and then finding the folder you want it to go to. It's also good to pay attention to where this is going by default so that you know where to find your files later if you need to look for them. And then you're going to click Create. I've already opened up the project, a blank project, so that we didn't have to wait forever. So this is my Spaceman game. You can see that it opened with the sample scene. Yours might be different depending on the Unity version that you're running. But I don't have anything in this game. The only thing I have in this game so far is the main camera. Okay, and that is it. I'm actually going to change my main camera to a softer, I don't know, maybe a gray color, just because that blue is going to look a bit grating whenever we're walking around on it. Let me change it to like a brown kind of. That'll look better. Okay. All right. First thing I need to do is I need to start getting my my folders, my files in order. So down here on my layout, and yours might look different from mine, but for me, I'm going to have my project folders down here. So in the project panel, inside my assets folder, I have one folder called Scenes. That is going to hold my sample scene in it. That's fine. We can keep it that way. But I want to bring in some artwork. So I'm going to create a new folder here by right-clicking. And then I'm going to go to Create Folder. And I'm going to type Sprites. And this is where I'm going to put my sprites, my artwork for my game. So I'm going to go ahead and open up that sprites folder. Oop. Let me come over here to, let me minimize this. I'm going to open up my assets package here. Now my Spaceman sprite needs to go into Unity. So I'm going to drop that in there. Okay, perfect. So this is going to be my main character. Okay. Now, when I have the sprite selected, notice that the inspector has some options over here. First, it's asking me what is the texture type. The texture type for this is going to be a Sprite 2D, which is exactly what I want, right? I don't want any of these other options, so Sprite 2D is what I'm looking for. For sprite mode, it needs to be single. There's only one frame in this sprite, so it's going to be a single sprite. The pixels per unit. So what this means is, if you noticed, here in the game view, there is this box. This is called a unit. And we want to set this unit to a certain size. How many pixels will fit inside this unit? Now my spaceman, if I keep it at 100 by 100, when I bring it in, notice it's very tiny inside of one of those units. I don't want that. What I want is I want my spaceman to fill in this unit. Now, I know I've built my spaceman to 32 by 32, so if I just do 32 pixels per unit and hit apply, when I bring my spaceman in, he'll fit right into one of the units, which is exactly what I'm looking for. There is a problem, though. Notice my spaceman is really fuzzy looking. He's not exactly as sharp as I want him to be, so we need to change some options in the sprite here. First, I want to go down here to filter mode. I want to turn off the filter. We don't really need a filter for our pixel art, so I'm going to turn that off. And I'm also going to turn off the compression. So down here where it says compression, I'm going to go to none. All right. There's really no point in compressing these files because they're not that big in the first place. I'm going to hit apply. And when I bring my spaceman out, notice that he's much sharper. And I get that really nice pixelated look that I'm looking for. Okay, perfect. I want to zoom out a bit. Now my spaceman looks pretty good. I'm going to put him right about there. If I hit play, I can see this is what my game looks like. Now, my game doesn't do anything. My spaceman can't move. There's no sounds playing. There are no bad guys. There's nothing happening here, right? Now, all I'm concerned with today is getting my spaceman moving around. Okay, so let's go ahead and start that process. The first thing my spaceman will need, if he's going to move around in my game, right? I'm going to select my spaceman object here in the hierarchy. And I'm actually going to rename him to player because you guys aren't going to be using a spaceman, probably. And so that way I can refer to this player object as just player, and we all know that it means our main player. Okay, so player is my object name. So if I look here, I have a transform component attached to my player object. That's great. I need that because I need to know where it is in X and Y and Z space. I need to know what its rotation value is. I need to know how big it is. Okay, so that transform component is exactly what I'm looking for. It also has a sprite renderer. Now notice my sprite renderer has a sprite attached to it, which is this spaceman sprite. I can also change the color here if I'd like. I can kind of play around with the color a little bit and change the color of my sprite. Okay. I actually like the colors that I designed him with, so I'm going to leave those alone. Just know that you can do that. I can flip my spaceman on the X or Y if, for instance, if you made your spaceman upside down and you need to flip him, or if you made your player, sorry, I keep referring to him as spaceman. If you made your player upside down, you need to flip him, you can do that here. I can change the draw mode, which we're not going to mess around with too much. And as a matter of fact, most of these other options we're not going to play with until maybe we might need to play around with a sorting layer later on when we start putting other objects in the game. But this transform component and sprite renderer component, that's exactly what I need to start with. Okay, so now I'm going to add another component into my game or onto my player. And I'm going to add a rigid body 2D. Now notice there are two rigid bodies here. There's rigid body and rigid body 2D. You want the rigid body 2D. This is a 2D project, so you want the 2D version of the rigid body. And it gives us tons of options. We're going to ignore most of these options because they deal with some physics calculations we don't really care about. The one thing we do need to change, however, is gravity scale. We do not want gravity to affect this player. We don't want the player to constantly be falling down in my level. So what I can do is change gravity scale from 1 to 0. That will keep my player from falling. The other thing I want to do is I want to click on this little arrow next to constraints, and it's going to give us some options here. We want to constrain our rotation on the Z-axis. That means I want to make sure that if I bump into something, I don't randomly start rotating, right? I want it to stay, I want the rotation to be handled by the script, not by random physics interactions. So I've done that. Okay, other than that, I think we're good. Now that I have a rigid body 2D attached to this object, he can move, or she, spacemen could be space women, can move around in my game. But there's nothing telling it that it has to move. There's nothing controlling it. There's nothing that says, hey, I need you to move around in this game, right? So what we need to do is we need to bring in that script. So if I look here, I have this player controller script. Now, because I want to keep my my project folders a little bit more organized, I'm going to create a new folder. Call this scripts. And I'm going to put my script inside of that scripts folder. Okay, I just want to make sure everything is organized. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about how scripts work in Unity. I'm going to click on it here, and I'm going to kind of take a look at the script here. Now, this is a very simple script, and it's probably really hard to see what we're looking at here, but this is just lines of code, all right? We are going to get into a little bit of writing code later on, but this is what the script has inside of it. All right, I've left comments throughout so we can kind of see what is doing what. And we're going to talk a lot more about scripting later on, but for right now, just know that this script right here handles everything we need in terms of movement, rotation, speed of our character, and it handles playing our sound effect. Okay. So we need to attach this script to our player. So here's the easiest way to do so. If we click on our player here and we go down to the Add Component button and we start typing the name of the script, player controller, right here. Now we've added our script into the game. Now, some of you are going to have problems in this step. You're going to try to add the script to your player, and it's just not going to add for some reason. For example, you may get an error that pops up that says, make sure that your class name and the file name match in order for you to, or fix compile errors or yada, yada, yada. If you haven't played around with my script, then there should be no compile errors. This script runs perfectly. What could be causing your problem is if your script name and your class name are different. So if you look up here on this fourth line of text, it says public class player controller. Now some of you, if you're downloading this file, may download the file into a folder that already has something called player controller inside of it, which means your file name would be, instead of player controller, it would be player controller parentheses 1 close parentheses. That name is not the same as the class name. So when you try to add that script to your player, I'm just going to drag it up here, you get this error, cannot add script, right? It's because of that parentheses right there. It's because of the addition of this parentheses 1 close parentheses. So all I have to do to fix that is come in here, rename it, and delete that extra text. Just make sure it says player controller and it matches that class name. Okay, so now I have my player controller script attached to my player. I have a couple of options here. One is move speed. For now it's set to 5. I found that in playtesting, 5 feels pretty good. I like 5. You can change that here just by typing in a different number. And then I also have walking SFX. Walking SFX. That stands for walking sound effects. Okay. Now it says here that there's none. There's no walking sound effect. We should still be able to test our game without the sound effect. So let's go ahead and give it a shot. Oh, no. Notice that I'm getting an error. Let's go to our console. So I have this red thing here that says the variable walking SFX of player controller has not been assigned. So that means over here where it says there's none in the audio source, we haven't actually added our sound effect yet. And so the script is looking for it, but it's getting confused because it's not there yet. So I'm going to pull out of play mode. Let's go ahead and add a sound effect to this project. So again, I'm going to need to add another folder. I'm going to create a new folder. I will call it Sounds. And inside my Sounds folder, I'm going to bring in my walking sound. Okay. Now on my player, I want to add another component, and this is going to be called an audio source. So an audio source, just like this. Now the audio source is looking for an audio clip. The audio clip is this walking sound here. We're going to drag that walking sound right up into that clip. I want to uncheck this option called Play on Awake. I do not want my sound effect to start playing as soon as the game starts, but I do want to check Loop, because this is going to be a walking sound effect. I want it to loop over and over again while I'm walking. Okay, now there's one last thing I need to do. Notice that this walking sound effect still does not have an audio source. Well, that's easy to fix. All we have to do is drag our audio source directly below it, up into this slot here, and drop it. Okay, now when we play the game, it should work, and we should get rotation, movement, and sound effects for our main character. Look at that. Okay, so you have now successfully created a game, something you can interact with. We started with nothing, and now we have a character that can move around on a screen, and there's some sound effects associated with it. That's pretty cool. I'm pretty excited about what we're going to do going forward, but this is a good place for us to stop here. So far, we've done a lot of work, and we've learned a lot about Unity. Next time, we're going to expand on that, and we're going to make some even bigger changes to this project. Okay, I'm going to play around with my game a little bit more, and I will see you guys next time.